Hello everyone, welcome back. So in today's session, actually in last session we completed this part configuring the DNS. Now we'll go for installation of grid infrastructure and Oracle software. As you already have seen that we created the grid home as well as Oracle home provided the proper permissions. Even we unzipped the grid binaries into the grid home, that is grid. So let me log in to my machines and then we can proceed. Just a second, let me check if my CentOS machine is up or not. Okay, I have to start this machine as well. I'll come back after this starts. Okay, so welcome back. Let's check the status of my CentOS machine and if the service named D is started or not. For that, what we need to do, need to check systemctl status named and you already know that active and running means it's enabled. Now we'll go to the other boxes and connect with those. So this is the first one, this is the second one. Okay, so we connected to all of them. One important thing, to install grid infrastructure, Oracle software and Oracle database, you need to log in with Oracle ID. So what I'll do, I'll close this session, or rather create, or I'll modify the session. Let me edit the session and specify the root name as Oracle. Let me check if we can change the display name somewhere. Okay, no issues. So now we connected with Oracle user. Change the display name to rack1. Now I'll modify the second machine as well. Okay, we'll connect using the Oracle user as well and change the tab to rack2 and say okay. And this will be renamed to DNS. Okay, so let's go to the grid home. Let's check. Okay, so binaries are here. What you need to do is run grid.sh. One more thing, make sure that you see if all the disks are visible. For that, what you need to do is su, just switch to the root user, validate Oracle ASM list disks. Yeah, it's visible. I'll check for the other one as well, because sometimes what happens that if the disks are not mounted while installing, there can be an error saying that disks are not available on the second one, or the second node cannot, or third node cannot see the disks. So need to check it before starting the installation. Oracle ASM list disks. See, that's what I was saying. Scan disks. So I have to initialize. What I will do, configure it, configure -i Oracle install. So the first one is who owns the driver interface. You will call it Oracle user. Now the group which owns it is install. Say that you want the library to be booted. Yes, this is what I have not done earlier. Sorry about that. You needed to do on both ends. That's done. Now we will say Oracle ASM init. Yeah, and now scan disks. Perfect. Now it's not giving the error. And list disks. So fine. You can go back to Oracle user. Now we are on the same directory. So what we need to do is run this sh script, shell script, that is grid setup.sh, and hold on for a minute until you see the pop-up. I'll be back as soon as we can see it. Okay, so welcome back. So this is what you will see while installation. So now for 11G release 2 and earlier versions, if you guys have ever installed the clusterware or the Oracle software, the look and feel of the interface was different. The latest version, actually not the 12C R1 but the 12C R2 and beyond, the interface has changed. There are some extra options, but you will understand which option to be picked, and I will show you what option needed to be picked, and then we can move on from there. So in this current situation, it's asking to select the option what we want to install. So we need to configure the Oracle Grid infrastructure for the new cluster. This is the new cluster. We are not going to upgrade it, or we are not going to do the standalone server or set up the software. No, we are not doing all these. We are just setting up the grid infrastructure for the new cluster. Let's move on, selecting that. So one thing I want to clarify, that there are chances where we might see some error. We will go through this portal. If we see some error, we will resolve from there, and it may take some time. There are chances where it might fail, and then we need to resolve it and then continue on from there, but you will see how everything is resolved and how you can install everything. So now you need to select configure an Oracle standalone cluster. Don't worry about the other options. Okay, the cluster name, this is different from the earlier version 11GR2 release 1 and release 2 as well as 12CR1. You never needed to provide the cluster name, but currently you will need to provide the cluster name. Cluster name is kind of an alias to connect to the cluster itself. So I have provided this rack cluster. I'll just leave this like default, but for the scan name, as you all have seen that our scan name is rack scan, so that needed to be changed, otherwise it won't be able to resolve it. Scan port, leave it as it is, 1521 as default. We are not going to play around with the port. Next. So now it's saying that rack scan could not be resolved. Just a second. Okay, so now comes the important part. See, this gives a good visualization of what we actually missed. What we will do, we will cancel it again. Currently in our machines, I'll show you that we are not pointing to the correct name server, the DNS server. Currently our two nodes are pointing to my router DNS. That is not we are going to look at. Our current DNS should be the DNS server we installed, that is CentOS, right? So that needed to be changed, and that will be that will be changed in the IP addressing scheme. Let me show you what I'm trying to say. Let me cancel it, and let's go to the virtual machines, login as root user, login here as well, root. This will give you a better picture of what needed to be done to install everything. We are just trying to put together all the missing puzzles. So you will see the errors, but the errors are good. What happens is, if there are errors, you will try to resolve it, and that's how you learn it properly. That's how you get different questions in your mind, and that's how you play around and then learn everything. That's how I learned. So now I'll do if config to see the interfaces. So that .150, so only one has to be changed to DNS. This one, see, 10.1, it should never be 10.1, it should be 149, because our DNS server is not .1, it's 149. That was the reason that it was not able to resolve it. Apply it and disconnect and reconnect to make this change. We will do if config again, and that's okay. Okay, just a second. Okay, perfect, no problem. I'll close this. We'll do the same thing here as well. Edit connection, ifconfig, the 0 is the first interface which has been publicly assigned the IP address for the internet. This will have a DNS route 149 because our DNS server is running on 10.49. Close it and disconnect and reconnect the interface. That's done. Let me check some more details. cat/etc/hosts. cat/etc/resolve.conf. Okay, so I was telling you guys earlier, right, that there can be multiple name servers. So my current servers can look up to 149 as well as 10.1. This will help this server to access the internet, and this one is actually locating our DNS server which we are using to install our clusterware for the rack scan. Same thing goes for this as well. Resolve.conf. Perfect. Let's try to run grid setup.sh. The videos this video can be longer because there can be some troubleshooting stuff, but I'm not going to edit the video. I want you guys to see what is happening. Okay, we came to the same page. Let's see if this resolves. What it will do, it will try to go to the DNS server, try to fetch the details from the DNS server. Because we provided the route, it can look up and route the traffic to the DNS server itself. That's the reason it was able to resolve. So this was kind of answer to the questions how these machines are looking up to the specific DNS server. Let's create SSH connectivity. This part is important, as I have already told you guys that Oracle password must be same for both nodes, so that while installation all the binaries will be transferred from node 1 to node 2 and the setup will be completed like that. So the this passwordless login will be created by the great software itself. For that, just click setup. What it will do, just a second, I actually missed one part. Let it finish this, then I have to add another node. I forgot to add the another node. So just add the another node, that is rack2.local domain, because we have two nodes, right? Don't worry about hub and leaf node. This is for the flex cluster. I might come up with the different installation for the flex ASM and flex cluster later, but currently we are installing the 12CR2 rack. This is rack 2-vip.local domain. Okay, now it will do the passwordless login. It will go and check both nodes, check the IP addresses, check the firewall. If everything is open, it will be setting up the keys for the passwordless authentication, so that when you want to SSH from one node to another node, you won't be asked for the password. It is called passwordless login. It has created that. Go next. This installation will take some time. This is a big binary. This is a big installation. So what I will do eventually, when I will show you guys all the screens, all the parts, I'll pause the video later. Don't want you guys to see everything, right? So current in this current screen, it's actually identifying which one is the public, which one is the ASM and private interconnect, and which one is not used. So yeah, it's identifying that ETH2 we actually created for the internet usage. ETH0 and 1 is for the Oracle use. It may throw some error, but let's see if it doesn't throw. Okay, it's not throwing the error. So we are configuring the ASM using the block devices, not the NFS. We are not going to do this. So say no. Okay, in this part you see that there is no disks showing up. We need to change the discovery path so that disk will show up. All the disks we have created, right, using the create disk, Oracle ASM create disk, must show up here, so that we can pick one disk from here for the installation and then install everything on top of it. So currently we will be selecting external redundancy. There will be a separate administration video for the redundancy, because it will go in depth of what the redundancy for the ASM is. There are different type of redundancy. So let's name it ext disk. Change the discovery path to Oracle ASM/disks. So yeah, it has identified the disk. I'll select the ext because we are installing clusterware. In clusterware installation, the first part is to install and set up voting disk and OCR under the ext disk. This is the first part. We are currently not installing a database and not setting up the FRA. This is the first, you can call it kind of base to everything, right? So yeah, select the ext, name it disk group as ext, and then move on. It's asking for password. You can give me password, make it easier. Do not put complex password so that you don't remember. We don't need IPMI, just click next. Don't need cloud control, click next, click next. Okay, so it has identified the software location. So the Oracle base is Oracle/base. Click next. Just a second. Let me check if we have created this path. I think we have created it. I don't know why it's not identifying. Just a second, let me identify. I'll create another session. Okay, ls cd ls-ld/oracle/base. Okay. See the issue? The permission, the group permission and the user permission is incorrect. So we need to actually change the permission. So chmod, actually ch ownership -r oracle o install. It won't be able to change it as you. ch own -r. So these are the small things that needed to be looked after. Otherwise it will keep throwing. Because why it's throwing the error? Because it's not able to access this particular directory. This directory owned by root, and we are using the Oracle ID. Oracle ID do not have permission on the root directory. That's the reason we need to change the ownership of this directory and change the permission as well. So the owner is Oracle and the group permission is install Oracle base product. Now we'll see ls-ld, sorry about that, ls-ld/oracle/base. I don't know if there is an issue. Just a second. Okay, good. Okay, so now we have perfect permission throughout. What I will do is I'll modify chmod chmod 775 and check the permission. Good. So we have to do the same thing for this as well. ls-ld/oracle/base. Yeah, same issues. So su. So what we will do, we'll just copy and paste. Copy and paste. chmod 775 ls-ld/oracle/base. I think everything is good. That's good now. So we will exit out of root account. Go back to our screen. I don't think it will throw error now. It shouldn't. Just a second, guys. Let me work on this and then I will come back. Okay, welcome back. There was nothing as such an issue, so we'll say yes, continue. This is a inventory directory. Say yes, next. Okay, just a second. Okay, I'm back. There was permission issues. So why this happens is I accidentally, being a root user, I started creating all these users. Somehow it didn't get reflected during the creation of directory itself. So these directory, right, when I created, there was some specific permission missing on the directory itself. So you need to actually verify that using the ls-ld, that is list directory, to see if the permission is proper with Oracle user and oinstall group. Otherwise it will keep throwing the error. So now it's not throwing the error, as you can see. I'll click next. It will perform some specific checks and requirements. There are some things which you can bypass actually. It will check the prerequisites for the installation of grid binaries. I have provided enough of resources to it. It shouldn't throw error. If it still throws error, we can bypass many of them. That should be fine. That's what I have seen in my experience. It shouldn't have any problem. Let it go through all the details. It's trying to resolve the scan. Yeah, it's throwing up a lot of things. So some of them can be resolved. So currently you see that the resolve.conf is saying that there is issue with the extra IP DNS server, and it's kind of conflicting it in the resolve.conf file. You guys must have seen that there are two name servers. What we will do is we need to actually comment it out on both of them and then recheck it and then install this package as well. Let me comment out the resolve.conf and come back, or I'll rather stay here and then show you guys what I'm trying to do. So here vi/etc/resolve.conf. Let's clear the screen and then do it. Just comment out the 10.1. It's not needed. We are not accessing the internet currently. So this is the for the first node. Let's do it for the other node as well. So these are the small things which will come up. There are chances that you might miss all these things, but in real environment there will be a checklist. You need to go through the complete checklist so that nothing is missing. But currently you are practicing on the lab environment. There are chances that sometimes you might miss, or sometimes you might not miss. So you can play around with it. There should always be a checklist. if you want everything to be smooth. We went through the checklist, but still there can be a human error, right? So yeah, in the real environment, usually what happens that we as DBA are assigned to create the shell scripts which actually validates all the requirements for the databases to be deployed and created for the specific requirements. It actually checks and throws the error. If something is not available, then DBAs actually kind of make sure that everything is resolved. So this part is done. Now this can be negated physical memory. I don't know why it throws the error even we have lot of memory, but this can be resolved, this one, and this should be already resolved with the resolve.conf integrity. So we will check it again. It should be resolved. Yeah, so it's gone, right? Now for this, let me show you what the location is. Okay, for this, being an Oracle user itself, actually you need to be root 1 2 3. So this is my first node. What you need to do is go to the grid home, grid, and then route. So ls, go to cv, ls, go to rpm, lsfnal. Okay, so you need to install it. So how do you install it? rpm -ivh cv. So it's installed. I'll say present working directory. Let me copy this and paste it into the other node as well, so that it will be the faster kind of route. Okay, so currently, oh, okay, my mistake. So we have already installed it. As you already know, we actually unzipped the file into the first node. So why would it be available on the second node? So let it be. Let's start installation. I'll copy it and paste in the nodes as well. Okay, sorry about that video camera. So this part is done. We can actually check it again. Okay, now we can ignore all and then can move on. So what I will do, I'll pause the video and let it go through the complete process of installation. Eventually what it will do is it will open up a box saying that you need to run the root.sh file on first node and then on the second node to set up the complete cluster, the Oracle high availability daemon, as well as the clusterware and its components. So I'll return back when it actually prompts to do that specific part. Until then, let me pause the video. Okay, so welcome back. Now you see that I have to run two scripts, right? The first is aura inst root.sh. So it is saying that we have to run it on node 1, that is rack 1 and rack 2 machine, and then grid.sh has to be run on rack 1 and rack 2. You guys need to make sure that both the script has to be run on the first node initially and then later the rack 2, otherwise there will be a problem. And as I told you earlier, the binaries will be copied from the current node, that is from the rack 1 to the rack 2. That's what it's doing, copying files from to the remote node, performing the setup and everything. That's what it does. So let me do it one by one. So Oracle Aura inventory, Aura. So don't click OK, otherwise it will perform the other actions without completing this action. So just go to the node, being on the root, because the root.sh or root file has to be run, right? So you need to be the root user. So go to Oracle Aura inventory, done. Same thing has to be done on the node 2 / Oracle Aura, done. Now let's run the bigger script. It will take some time, the grid root.sh file. So make sure you are on the first node. We are currently on rack 1, so we'll run it here, /grid home root.sh. Press enter here, and now just wait. What it will do, it will go through the complete process of setting up of different processes, that is Oracle high availability daemon, the clusterware, the cluster ready services, and cluster synchronization services, and other type of daemons as well, whatever is required, the different components of clusterware including ASM. It will set up, it will locate the voting disk and OCR file and everything in there. So you will see all the steps, you will see all the things while it's installing. So I'll pause the video, I'll come back as soon as this is completed, then we will run the same script on the other node. Okay everyone, so now the installation has been completed successfully. You see that it's succeeded. Okay, so it succeeded and it went through everything, including starting up of resources, cluster resources. You see EVMD and other type of resources, GPNPD, that is grid plug and play. It identified the voting disk and everything. So now the Oracle high availability service daemon as well as CRS is now up. So now we have to run the same root.sh on the second node as well. So what we need to do is go to grid root.sh. What it will do is it will add the node, it will start the different services as well as processes, and it will add this node to the cluster as well, create the cluster resources, start the Oracle high availability service daemon, start the CRS service, which eventually will start the other services too. Cluster ready services, that CRS is actually very important service. On top of it there are different components which automatically starts as soon as CRS starts. It actually starts the different services. So yeah, let it set it up and go through the process and add this node to the cluster, so that in future when we shut down the server itself and start up this server, the server will come up, it will start the init file which will eventually start the Oracle high availability service daemon process, and which will start the CRS as well, so that all the component will be up. So let it finish. I'm going to pause it again. So now the grid infrastructure has been installed. We can verify that using the ps command, ps-ef pipe grep ohsd. So Oracle high availability service daemon is running. It can be validated on the other node as well. Or you can verify using, let me check. Okay, so ASM has been set up. So what you can do, you can just change the environment variable to plus ASM1 to actually execute CRS-ETL. So let me check. So if you want to validate the CRS, run CRS-ETL, check CRS. So you can see that the cluster services are running, the CRS, the OHASD, the CSS, the EVMD, everything is running fine. You can check the cluster as well. CRS-ETL check cluster hyphen all. So yeah, it shows that it's running on both the nodes. You can check the resources as well, but currently you can only see the cluster ready services status only, because the other resources like virtual IPs, the database services, and the listeners are not yet created because we haven't installed the Oracle software yet. You won't be able to see those. Let me show you what I'm trying to say. CRS-ETL status resource -t. So ASM is online. Database is not yet up. That is the reason you don't see the database yet. These are the resources for the ASM itself. These are the scan listeners. You see that there were three IP addresses. For that there was 3 scan listeners created. So there are 3 scan listeners. There are 2 virtual IPs. For the 2 IP addresses we provided, you already have seen it, and the 2 physical IP addresses. So these are the 3 scan listeners which are running on the 2 nodes. So the scan 3 and 2 is running on rack 1, and scan listener 1 is running on rack 2. You can also verify using ps-ef pipe grep TNS. It will show you the current listener, scan listener. So as I have already told you, for 1 and 2 and 3 are running. So yeah, here you see that this one and this one, and I have promised that as soon as we we complete the installation of the Oracle clusterware, we can actually use NS lookup to resolve the rack scan name to the 3 IP addresses. Let me show you. So NS lookup from the first node rack scan. Yeah, you see that? So it's resolving into 3 IP addresses, 1, 2 and 3. When I keep running it, Let me run it again, so you won't see 182 at the first line. See that? So this is called round robin. So yeah, so we have completed this clusterware installation. I'll stop the video here. Thank you very much for watching. The next video will be Oracle software installation. Thanks.